Hey, everybody, welcome to the program, WRSA Radio. I am your host, G1, as always. I hope you're having a good week. It has been, man, I tell you, for a guy who got laid off from his job, I have been more busy this week than I have been in, man, I don't know how long. I've just been getting my butt kicked this week. I have so much stuff to do. I'm trying to get ahead of next week because of the things that are going on that I'm just not going to have time to do all the things that I need to do. So particularly like schoolwork or, I think I mentioned I'm going back to school to take some classes and it's just been getting my butt kicked this week. So this show is going to be rather short, I guess, maybe 10 minutes. I don't know. And I'm just doing it off the cuff. I didn't even have time to write a script. I have an idea of what I want to talk about today. But yeah, I just didn't even have time to sit down and really put things on electronic paper like I normally do. I normally prepare pretty good for the show. And I have a good idea and everything. But I did get an idea today of something that I wanted to talk about. And it kind of loops in some of the things that have been going on in our lives, my wife and I's life, with what we're experiencing overall as a country. So I mentioned that I think on the last episode that I had something going on next week, family related. And really, it starts next week. It's probably going to take some time, but we have reached the inevitable point in life where you are faced with the problem of long-term care for parents. My in-laws have come to a point in their lives where one of them is dealing with dementia, early stage dementia, and it's progressing probably quicker than it should, but definitively more pronounced over the last 6 to 8 months. And it's just become a situation where it's becoming difficult for the other parent to take care of them. And I'm being a little vague just to maintain some anonymity here. And the other parent is facing some health problems of their own, so it's just become too difficult for them to care for one another and try to maintain a household. So they made the very difficult decision to move into assisted living, and that is going to take place sometime next week, at least beginning, and then it'll probably take a little time to finish all of that process over the next couple of weeks. So I may be, in and out and not be able to put together a super great show or be just, as up on current events as I normally try to be. But it is one of these things that almost all of us have to deal with at some point in our lives, and we'll all have to face it eventually ourselves. It's just the natural evolution of things. And it's a very difficult decision. It's very hard on everyone involved. I've gone through it with my grandparents, my parents dealing with my grandparents, and so I've seen it firsthand. I know how difficult this can be, and a lot of the challenges that you face. And it reminds me very much of the challenges that we're facing as a country. Some of the family is having difficulty dealing with this because of just the nature of the transition of this change, where you're remembering back about how all of the family gatherings and all of the good times and things that you had in the family home, and this thought of having to move away from that and sell the family home, it's very difficult. It's very difficult. And it just reminded me of this idea that you can't go back. You look back on the past and you remember the glory, you remember the good times, and what all of those were for you and all the impact that they had on your life, but you can't go back to it. That age-old thing, that thing that we once were, that thing that we had, it's not there anymore. And the only thing that you're going to have in the future doesn't mean that the future is going to be bad. It just means that the future is going to be different. There's going to be change involved, and the change is going to be painful and difficult to go through. But the future can still be bright. There can still be good times ahead and good memories to make ahead. But we're going to have to go through this very difficult and painful time in order to get there. And that very much reminded me of what we're going through as a country. And it reminded me of the story of Moses and the Promised Land. Moses didn't make it to the Promised Land. Some of us aren't going to make it through what is going to happen to this country. Some of you will. Some of us will. Some of us will be there to lead and be examples and remember what the past was like to pass it on to future generations. But some of us aren't going to make it. So are you going to be a Moses or a Joshua? We don't know yet. We don't really have a way of seeing it and knowing. But it's still a very difficult thing. It's a thing that we have to focus on. We have to think about. What's our role? What do we see ourselves doing? How do we see ourselves in this future? I think you have to imagine yourself in both cases. That you may be there to help future generations remember. But also you may just be there to help others get to that glorious place in the future. Both of those things are very worthy of being and experiencing, but one of them is more difficult than the other. But maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe those who will be on the other side are going to have it more difficult than those who don't make it through. I don't know about that, but, could be the case. I do know that, when a family goes through these things, we have to think about our children and our children's children. And we keep alive that memory of parents and grandparents and great-grandparents, because that's really the only way that any of us survives and lives longer than our physical presence on the earth. It's through those memories and those stories and all that knowledge that is passed down. If we don't remember those people, if we don't pass that information on, then people truly do die and disappear. I don't want that to happen to any of my ancestors. I try to remember those stories and I try to pass that information along, read the things that I have and talk about those stories. I have inherited a great deal of family history and family information from my aunt, who was big into genealogy and is big into genealogy, but she's kind of gotten to the point where she can't do those things anymore the way she used to, and so she's passed it all on to me. So I have this huge library of family information, and going through those stories and those pictures and letters and things, it's just so enlightening. And being able to pass that information on is just so important. It's critically important to future generations. And I say all these things just to remind you that that's probably the only thing that most of us will be able to accomplish as this all unfolds. Some of us may be faced with situations where we have huge impacts. Somebody out there listening might be a future leader, might be someone who's going to lead people through out of the darkness into the light. But most of us are probably just going to have to be a light for our own little tribe of people. And that's totally okay. That's really a greater responsibility, in my opinion. If we all do that little part for each of our own little tribes, then we all get through to the other side in a better shape than we would if everyone's trying to be the big leader, the general or what have you, and nothing ever gets accomplished, right? It's way more difficult, I think, to be that little light for just your immediate tribe. So I urge you to preserve as much of the memory and the history as you can, because, again, that might be all that we get the opportunity to do, is pass that information on to those future generations. And that's really about all I got to talk about this week. It's been, like I said, it's been a tough week. We had the school shooting here in Georgia, near a place that I grew up in. Honestly, not very far from where I grew up as a teenager, as a young person, as a teenager. And I know people who have connections to that school. It's not entirely surprising that something like that would happen as we close in on the election, probably the most important election and important turn of events that has happened in our lifetime, or at least, the last 30 or 40 years, I would say. So as that time approaches, be thinking about that. Be collecting your information and be thinking about legacy. Be thinking about the information that you're going to pass on. What is important to you? What is most important to you? Who are the people who are most important to you that need this information? And I say information because it's not necessarily just books and knowledge. That's a big part of it, but just the story. People need to remember what we once were. People need to remember what our legacy will be, what our birthright was. So like I said, that's about all I have to talk about today. I want you guys to be thinking about that, and be paying attention to those things. Pay attention to your people. We're not all going to make it, and you gotta spend the time that we have left together doing the right things. So anyway, that is all I have for this week. Like and subscribe. Come see us over on Gab, Nice Crew, and over on the Cold Fury blog and the Dry Dock. And I will see you on the next episode.